Every morning, before you back out of the driveway, you are doing something to your engine that no amount of oil changes, tune-ups, or premium fuel can undo. I know that because I have spent 22 years pulling engines apart and reading exactly what happened to them before they got to my lift. And the story is almost always the same. It starts at ignition. It starts the moment you turn the key. In those 22 years, I have worked on over 3,000 engines. I have seen motors with 280,000 miles that looked almost new inside, and I have seen motors with 74,000 miles that looked like they had been dragged behind a truck. The difference was never the brand of oil. It was never the car. It was what the driver did in the first 60 seconds every single morning. What I'm about to tell you is something most mechanics know, and almost none of them say out loud, because the silence is profitable. When your engine fails early, somebody gets paid. Today, that somebody is not going to be a dealership. Here is what you are doing wrong. You are warming up your car. You are sitting in the driveway for 5, 7, maybe 10 minutes on a cold morning, letting the engine run, thinking you are doing it a favor. Your parents told you to do it. Your instincts tell you it makes sense. Let the engine warm up before you put it under load. That sounds responsible. It sounds careful. And it is destroying your engine more reliably than almost anything else you can do to it. That is not an opinion. That is the mechanical reality of how a modern fuel-injected engine actually operates during a cold start. And it is the opposite of what most drivers believe is happening. Here is what is actually going on under the hood. Modern engines, every car built after the mid-1980s, use electronic fuel injection. When the engine is cold, the fuel management system detects the low coolant temperature and enriches the air-fuel mixture. It dumps extra fuel into the cylinders to help the engine run smoothly before the oxygen sensors come fully online and the system closes the loop. That is normal. That is engineered. The problem is what happens when you let that enriched mixture run inside a cold cylinder for 4, 5, 6 minutes without load. Raw fuel washes down the cylinder walls. It does not combust completely when the engine is cold and at idle. Some of it migrates past the piston rings and dilutes the oil film on the cylinder wall itself. That oil film is the only thing standing between the piston rings and bare metal. When you thin it with unburned fuel during a long idle, you are increasing wear on the cylinder walls, the rings, and the ringlands of the piston, and the engine gives you no indication that any of this is happening. Every morning you sit in that driveway for 7 minutes, you are accelerating the internal wear of your engine by a measurable amount. Here is what they do not tell you. Manufacturers know this. The engineering teams that design these fuel injection systems know that extended cold idling is not the warm-up strategy the engine was built for. The owner's manual on most modern vehicles, if you read the fine print, does not recommend extended idling as a warm-up procedure. What they recommend, buried in language most people skim past, is a brief idle followed by gentle driving under light load, because load is what actually warms a modern engine correctly. Combustion under load raises cylinder temperature faster and more evenly than idling does. The engine reaches operating temperature, the fuel trims normalize, and the oil warms and circulates through the entire system far faster when the car is moving gently than when it is sitting still. Dealers will never tell you this because the engine damage from years of extended cold idling is not something that shows up as a single catastrophic failure. It shows up as premature ring wear, reduced compression, increased oil consumption, and a motor that starts burning oil quietly somewhere around 80,000 to 90,000 miles instead of 150,000. At that point, the service advisor tells you the engine is worn and you need a rebuild or a replacement. And they are not wrong. They just did not mention that it did not have to happen that way. What I have pulled out of engines that were idled every morning for years is something that changes how you think about this habit permanently. And that is what comes next. Let me show you exactly what this looks like inside the engine, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. When fuel dilutes the oil film on a cold cylinder wall, the surface does not wear evenly. It glazes. The piston rings are designed to maintain a microscopic cushion of oil between themselves and the cylinder bore, a film so thin you could not measure it with a fingernail. That film keeps the rings seated, keeps compression where it belongs, and keeps combustion gases above the piston where they belong. When you strip that film repeatedly over hundreds of cold starts, the rings begin to pass combustion gases downward into the crankcase. That is called blow-by. And once blow-by starts, it accelerates. Crankcase pressure rises, the PCV system gets overwhelmed, and you start losing compression in the cylinders, which means the engine has to work harder to produce the same power, burn more fuel to go the same distance, and the oil that remains in the system gets contaminated faster from the combustion gases passing through it. You start consuming oil between changes. Then, one morning you notice a faint blue haze in the rearview mirror, and you think the engine is just getting old. It is not old. It was worn ahead of schedule. Worn by 7 minutes in the driveway, every morning, for years. The crankshaft bearings tell the same story from a different angle. Engine oil does not flow instantly to every bearing surface the moment the engine starts. It takes 2 to 4 seconds for oil pressure to fully establish through the entire lubrication circuit after a cold start. During that window, the bearings are running on residual oil film, whatever clung to the metal from the last time the engine ran. That residual film is thin. It is enough for a few seconds of low RPM idling. It is not enough for 10 minutes of idling with fuel washing the cylinder walls and thinning the oil simultaneously. You are loading the bearings with a degraded lubricant during the exact period when they are most vulnerable. 2 Corollas came through the shop the same month, a 2014 and a 2015, both at 106,000 miles, both serviced on schedule, both running the same oil weight. The only difference we could identify was the morning habit. The 2014 driver had been running the engine for 8 to 10 minutes every winter morning before leaving for work. The 2015 driver did a 30-second idle and drove gently for the first mile. When we pulled the valve covers, the 2014 had visible sludge build up in the head, restricted oil passages around the cam journals, and a compression reading on cylinder 3 that was 18 pounds per square inch below the other cylinders. The 2015 looked like it had 40,000 miles on it. The 2014 driver needed a top-end rebuild. The bill came to $3,140. Same car, same mileage, same oil change intervals. One habit separated them. Quick reminder, if this is the first time you have heard any of this and it is changing how you think about your car, hit that subscribe button right now. We put out videos like this every week, and most of what we cover is stuff the dealership is counting on you never finding out. Here is the exact behavior change, and I want you to notice that it costs nothing and takes less time than what you are already doing. When you start your car in the morning, let it idle for 30 to 45 seconds. Not 5 minutes, not 8 minutes. 30 to 45 seconds, just long enough for oil pressure to fully establish through the lubrication circuit and reach the top of the engine. In warm weather, 20 seconds is sufficient. If you are in a genuinely cold climate and the temperature is below freezing, extend that to 60 seconds at the outside, then put it in gear and drive. Not hard, not aggressively. Keep the RPMs under 2,000 for the first mile. Accelerate gently. Let the combustion itself do the warming, because that is exactly what it is engineered to do. What you are doing during that gentle first mile is warming the engine the way the fuel injection system was designed to be used. Under light load, the combustion temperature rises, the coolant temperature climbs steadily, the oxygen sensors come online, and the fuel management system begins trimming back the enrichment in real time. The oil reaches operating viscosity faster because the engine is generating heat through work, not through prolonged cold idling. By the time you reach the end of your street, the engine is already doing more for itself than it would have accomplished sitting in your driveway for 7 minutes. By the time you hit the first traffic light, the fuel trims are normalizing, and the cylinder walls are getting a proper oil film rather than a fuel wash. There is one additional piece that most drivers skip entirely, and it matters more than the idle time. Do not use full climate control in the first 2 minutes. Running the defroster, the heated seats, and the blower at maximum while the engine is still cold puts an immediate electrical and mechanical load on a system that has not finished its warm-up cycle. The alternator draws harder, the serpentine belt is under tension before the tensioner has fully seated against operating temperature, and the engine control unit is still managing a cold enrichment phase while simultaneously compensating for the additional load. Over 5 years of winter mornings, that adds up to something real. Run the blower on low for the first 2 minutes, the windshield will still clear, the engine will thank you, that is the entire fix. 30 to 45 seconds of idle. 1 mile of gentle driving. Climate control on low until the temperature gauge begins to move. No tools, no products, no appointment. Free. Now let me show you what that habit is worth in real numbers, because this is where most people underestimate what they are protecting. A top-end engine rebuild on a 4-cylinder sedan, the kind of work needed when ring wear and cylinder glazing have progressed to the point of meaningful oil consumption and compression loss, runs between $2,600 and $4,800 depending on the shop and the extent of the damage. A realistic midpoint for a Camry or an Accord in that condition is $3,640. That assumes the block is salvageable. If the cylinder walls have worn past the point of honing and the block needs to be bored out, or if the bearing surfaces on the crankshaft have developed scoring, you are looking at a full engine replacement, which on those same vehicles runs $5,200 to $7,900 installed with a remanufactured long block. Those are not worst-case numbers. Those are what people actually pay. Beyond the rebuild cost, there is a quieter expense that compounds every single month before the engine ever throws a code or burns a noticeable amount of oil. An engine running extended cold enrichment every morning, fuel trims not yet normalized, combustion efficiency reduced, uses measurably more fuel than an engine that reaches operating temperature quickly and cleanly. The Department of Energy has confirmed that an engine at operating temperature runs significantly more efficiently than one in cold enrichment mode. Drivers who idle for 8 minutes every morning in a vehicle averaging 28 miles per gallon are burning fuel during those 8 minutes that does nothing but keep the engine running. No miles covered, no efficiency gained. Over a year of daily cold weather commuting, the difference in fuel cost between a 45-second idle and an 8-minute idle can run $180 to $260 depending on local fuel prices and how cold your winters are. That is money spent on a habit that is simultaneously damaging the engine it is supposed to be protecting. The fix costs $0. The alternative, played out over 8 or 10 years of winter mornings, costs you a rebuild, elevated fuel bills, and an engine that hits its ceiling at 90,000 miles when it should have gone to 200,000. You have been doing it the wrong way because everyone told you the wrong way was right. Your parents were not wrong for their era. Carburetor engines genuinely needed that warm-up time because carburetors could not self-adjust the way fuel injection does. The habit made complete sense in 1974. It makes no sense in a 2009 Camry, a 2014 Civic, or a 2018 Silverado. The engine in your driveway is not the engine your parents were warming up. Treat it like what it actually is, and it will run for a very long time. 30 to 45 seconds, 1 mile easy, climate control on low. That is it. That is the whole thing. Do it tomorrow morning and every morning after that, and your engine will show you the difference in the only way engines can, by lasting. If you want to know what else is quietly wearing your engine out before it's time, click the video on the left. I'll see you there.